And now I'm going to give you Sir Philip Harrington.
Thank you. Though I am not a doctor in any sense of the word, I should call attention to the fact that one of my prime sources, influences on my understanding of Haiti has been Dr. Paul Farmer, who is a medical doctor, specialist in basically global community health, and has done a lot of work in Haiti before and after the earthquake. And he has a book from before and after. And so if you're looking for more of the kind of perspective I will bring, that's where you can find it. As you can tell from your timeline, we're not going to cover all that history. Even if we had, if we took both sessions this morning, we're having two basically 55-minute sessions. Even if we took both on the history, we wouldn't cover it. And so, again, I want to remind you that what I'm presenting is not a history class as much as it is a perspective, putting forward some perspectives that might help us put the history of the Caribbean in perspective, and make things a little bit more clear. So that's what we're aiming for. And we'll aim to get done by 10:20, 10:25, so we can have some sessions, ask some questions, a time for some actual questions. It does you no good to fill out a card, index card this time, but we'll have a time for some question and response, and then a short break, and then hopefully the last session will be a little bit less formal and be a little bit more like a party as we explore some of the culture, mostly musical, of the Caribbean. The ingredients for both the history and the cultural gifts of the Caribbean are pretty much the same. We have that Taino shadow that we talked about last week, even though we have no Tainos, official pureblood Taino representatives of that culture left. Their influence in the Caribbean has been there, sometimes undercover, sometimes overlooked, but it is there and has affected both the history and the culture. And then, of course, the colonists, the different flavors of colonists are another ingredient. So that even those cultures that developed in the Caribbean from the same, under the auspices of the same country, like Spain, you know, all three, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico, in Cuba. I don't know if I get them all in there. Were basically influenced by Spain, but each of those show differentiation in how that Spanish influence revealed itself and interacted with the other influences, like the importation of African slaves, a major cultural and historical influence. And then, of course, this country, the United States, has been a major player, both before 1898 and mostly, considerably, afterward. So I'm going to focus mostly on Haiti because Haiti is the first of the countries to gain their independence, just about 25 years after we did in this country. So it was the first independence achieved, but it is also the country that has the roughest time. It is the country that bears the scars of colonialism most heavily. And if you've been reading the news, you know, and am I trying to update myself, it gets depressing. I have to kind of conclude that we consider Haiti, as far as its governmental entity goes, a broken country. And so what I want to do is to look at a couple of things, two or three things that help us understand why that might be, why the oldest independent country in the Caribbean is also the most conflicted I want to do that with the help of two people. William Jennings Bryan, you remember him? He did run for president and didn't make it, but he did become Secretary of State. And then Denny McLain, the Detroit Tiger pitching star. I see some flashes of recognition. Good. And you may wonder why, but I'll try to explain that. 1913 is the year. William Jennings Bryan is attending an official diplomatic event in which he is introduced for the first time to the ambassador from Haiti. And this is a recorded conversation. So you can find this and look this up. We are very much interested in Haiti. Tell me about the country and who the people are. And then Bryan, kind of in matter of fact, or a by the way attitude, says, where is Haiti? That's in the historical record, that question. So after Bryan hears some of the history that you may know already, or will be reminded of Haiti and how it has a heavy influence from France, gained its independence from France because the Spanish didn't really know how to take best use of it. The French did. They knew that they had to cut down everything and go to plantations and then bring in a whole lot of African slaves, more African slaves than anyone else did in the Caribbean. So that it has that African bulk of its population besides its colonial history. After hearing that, this is what our Secretary of State, William Jennings Bryan, said. Now, I don't know how to assess the racism in that comment. That was a different era. Language was different too. But what I want to focus on is the condescension and the aloofness. The fact that a Secretary of State did not even know where Haiti was, let alone much about its history. It was kind of a non-entity. That distance between people's perception and awareness lasted and maintained. It is something that has characterized until probably maybe the earthquake even. At the fall of the Duvalier regime in 1986, who do you think had, Judge, your assessment of our media, who do you think had the most correspondence in Haiti at the time? All that turmoil was happening. Which one? You got it. They had one person. No, you're wrong. The New York Times did. The Post had 0. New York Times had 1 correspondent. That's the major media coverage in Haiti at the time of great turmoil. 1 person in country. There are 3 languages. Well, there are basically 2 languages in Haiti. Very few Haitians speak English, very, very few. So the English is the people who are working in Haiti through companies or through American missions. French is the official language. That's what's used in government circles in Haiti. And it's the language of the elite, this very small but very powerful elite in Haiti. In Creole is a derivation of French that all of the people speak. And so most of the population speaks basically Creole. So our 1 correspondent in Haiti at the time, this pivotal time in history, how many of these languages did he speak? Okay. You got it. He spoke 1 language, and that was not helpful to him really, or her. I think it was a him, but I don't know for sure. So you can see that even the correspondent that was there was distance in many ways from what was actually going on. Haiti is a place where they like proverbs. And there are a lot of good ones. One children's book back there has some more if you want to look at Wok nan dio pakonen dule, wok nan sole. The rock in the water does not know the pain of the rock in the sun. So a lot of what has influenced and impaired Haiti is in its development is an ignorance. This was not always the case. Haiti once had the term Pearl of the Antilles. There was more wealth being produced in Haiti for the colonists at one time in its heyday than any of the other colonies in the Caribbean. In fact, there was more wealth coming out of Haiti, being produced in Haiti, than in all of the 13 American colonies put together. It was generated a lot of financial resources. And then there was the historical reason that people were interested in Haiti. One time, Washington was very much interested in Haiti because of its revolution. Here we had company. We're not the only ones to rebel against our colonial overlords. The Revolutionary War for Independence and Freedom in Haiti began its stirring in 1791, began majorly in 1801, and was finally officially declared in 1804. So we had our General Washington. Haiti had General Toussaint Louverture. And second major leader, Jean-Jacques Dessalines. And it was, I think, this is from Toussaint Louverture, I was born a slave, but nature gave me the soul of a free man. So we should be able to identify with that spirit. Did we laud it and celebrate the fact that we had company? This was General Washington's comment on the rebellion in Haiti. To see such a spirit of revolution among the Blacks is lamentable. And kind of explaining this attitude is a statement by Thomas Jefferson. If this combustion can be introduced among us under any veil whatever, we have to fear it. So there was hostility towards this idea of Haiti becoming independent. Here is where I think you can see the blatant racism coming in. Sure, slavery is an economic thing, but economics and the racism are really I've always been intertwined. And this meant that Haiti would pay a price for its independence. When France realized that it could not keep sending, there's a lot going on in Europe that time. This is the age of Napoleon, okay? So there's a lot of going on in France at the time. They realized they would not be able to commit the resources to defeat these rebellious slaves. But they had the audacity to say, okay, we'll let you have your freedom, your independence, but you have to pay us. You have to pay us to compensate for the wealth that we could continue exploiting from you if you had not rebelled. How does a conquered nation, a defeated nation, have the ability to say that to the victorious party? Well, the fact is that France still had a lot of power in Europe, and not everybody in France liked Napoleon or the French at that time, but they still recognized them as a major power that they didn't want to create undue problems for. So France could say, you won't do business with anyone unless you pay us this debt. Unless you pay us this amount, we will keep anybody from doing business with you. And of course, those major European powers had colonies of their own. So they had reason to take France aside. So there was clout there. Haiti was forced into this debt. And of course, then the hostility in the United States at that time, young United States, was very happy to back up France in their demand. How much was 100 million francs at the turn of that century? Well, to put it in comparison, something else was going at the time. This was also the time of the Louisiana Purchase, where France charged the United States 80 million francs for the whole Louisiana Purchase. Okay, now, just to remind you, that was more than Louisiana. That this map shows the size of, and this map does not show Haiti, but I think you can know that it does not really compare. In fact, this map has the, even though those states did not, the Louisiana Purchase did not come with those state designations and borders, but you see the present day Iowa, you can easily fit 2 Haitis into that one state. So what's going on here, I thought the comparison, France was charging Haiti nearly twice as much to rent their own country as it was charging the United States for the whole purchase of a humongous estate. Charging rent for a cabin was twice the price tag as the purchase price of a whole humongous estate. That might even be understating it. And of course, Haiti had no resources to pay that, but it could do it incrementally. And it meant that there was this always, right from the start, there was always this unsurmountable burden. It took well over 100 years for that. Actually, at the time, the value of Haiti was probably a little bit less than what it was in the heydays, because the French occupation, the French exploitation of the place was so complete. I remember the first time I saw the island of La Gonâve from the air. And still in 1969, you could see the effects of the French. La Gonâve is that island that's in kind of the jaws of Haiti. And you could see a tan ring for a long, big space of water around the island was tan. That's because that was the soil, La Gonâve soil washing into the sea. The French, La Gonâve was a mahogany forest when the French found it. It was mahogany forest, and they stripped the island bare. Every single tree was removed from La Gonâve, and the soil just continued washing away. You could still see the effects, all that many years later. What do you do when your land is getting depleted? Plantation agriculture is not always very good for the soil anyway. So the mainland had its own difficulties. Well, there was another resource that Haiti would have that would help the rest of the world out. And to introduce ourselves to that is our friend Denny McLean. And I don't know, I'll pass out some of these baseballs. Anyone want to catch? I thought, okay. Right, and just to reacquaint you with what a baseball looks like. The year of my first trip to Haiti that I told you about last time was 1969. At that time, the Detroit Tigers, my team, were the reigning world champions. And in 1968, the person who helped them get there, as I recall, he wasn't very influential in helping them win the World Series, but the person who really got them there was Denny McLean and his 31 victories. And so Time magazine put him on the cover, on their cover. And the Detroit Tigers paid him that year of 1969 $100,000 as his yearly salary. And that may not sound like a lot to us, but the average baseball player, professional baseball player that year was making $40,000. So Denny was earning a little more than twice what most players were earning. And the median at U.S. income that year, 1969, was $10,000, believe it or not. So Denny McLean was not doing too badly for himself. Now, you also remember that at the time, all the baseballs in the major leagues were being made in Haiti by Haitian women seamstresses. And they earned $250 a year for their work, basically about 10 hours a day of labor. There's quite a distance between those figures. I did some calculation, found that every time Denny McLean in 1969 threw a baseball, pitched a baseball, he earned $15.50. Every time, every pitch he threw. The Haitian seamstress earned 2.5 cents for every baseball she stitched together. And I forget exactly how many, I heard once how many baseballs you could stitch in an hour. It was somewhere between 5 and 10, as I recall. I don't know. But I don't think that she can stitch one as fast as Denny can throw one. I did find that a news report that said that Haitian baseball seamstresses earned $1.30 to $1.70 per day in 1977. And then about 10 years later, Alan Ebert reported that it had gone up to $3.10 per day. That would be 1985. I don't know how much money I was making in 1985, but it was a little bit more than $3.10. So this is Haiti's other resource. You can see how a manufacturer like Spalding would be kind of happy about this. Their investment in a case of 36 baseballs was $3.10. Their return was anywhere from $110 to $150 for that same case. So this is Haiti's resource that became very evident and was promoted not only in this country, but around the world. Haiti offers a marvelous opportunity for American investment. The run-of-the-mill Haitian is handy, easily directed, and gives a hard day's labor for 20 cents, while in Panama, the same day's work costs $3. So a lot of people had a vested interest in Haiti, in keeping Haiti very poor. You don't want them to be competing with, say, the workers in Panama. We hope that a lot of these things will be changing in after the earthquake. There was a lot of attention in building Haiti back better, making some changes in the way we helped Haiti. But I've been trying to keep track and have not seen a whole lot. There is some, but not a whole lot of progress in the area. After the earthquake, senior director of Gap clothing manufacturing, which had a plant in Haiti, in Port-au-Prince, made this statement: the workforce is motivated, dedicated, and friendly. The resilience of the people came across stronger than anything else after the quake. Despite their personal losses and tragedies, people were back at the factories 72 hours later. We need to work, they said. They live from day to day, and that is their situation. I don't know, I'd like to talk with Mark Dessau, whoever he is, to ask him a couple questions about what he exactly meant by that, but it doesn't sound, I'd like to ask him whether he knows what it means that if people are that desperate when they're still unburying themselves and looking for relatives and grieving, if they're that desperate that they're back 72 hours later, what that means about the economic situation. I'd like to think that Mark Dessau met them at the doors of the factories and said, no, here's your day's wage, your $3.10 or whatever it was at that time. In fact, here's the rest of your week's wage. Now go back and continue searching for your relatives or burying them. And we'll see you next week. I don't know what he said, but I'd like to think he said that. As it is, his statement there, his description of the Haitian people is not that much different from that 1926 assessment in the Financial America article. And for that matter, it's not really that different from what we encountered in Columbus's diary in 1492, when he met the Indians, the Taínos, not the Africans this time, but the Taínos of Hispaniola. They are fit to be ordered about and made to work, to sow, and do everything else that may be needed. In a sense, Haiti has never gotten out from under that perception. So there is a price. We call Haiti independent, but in a sense, it is dependent still. And there is a price for that. A new slogan that people have given Haiti instead of Pearl of the Antilles is the kingdom of NGOs. And that's because when Haiti should have been developing its infrastructure and putting money into things like education, they were always discouraged by the world powers, the World Bank, International Monetary Fund. No, you've got to get your debt payment taken care of. So all of that money that should have been going into the development of the country was going outside the country. And most of the wealth that the country was producing, likewise, was going out. People were coming there to make money and then taking it out of Haiti. So when things need to get done in the country, a road built or a farm established or something like that, non-governmental organizations and as well as missions, I include the missions in with that, would come in and do that work, do the medical education, build the hospital, sometimes schools. So we know schools never got as much attention as something that could bring income to somebody else. So in a sense, there is a machine creating perpetual poverty in Haiti, efforts to keep the wages low. We'll talk about, and you may have read in your timeline, that the first truly that looked active democracy in Haiti. They had elections, for presidents, but they were quite often rigged and they were quite often abused and used. The clearest evidence of the people having a voice and expressing their voice was when in the election of Jean-Bertrand Aristide. And I think it was in his second term of office when he tried to raise the minimum wage, hourly wage. Now, we're not talking daily wage. We're talking hourly wage from 35 cents up to 50 cents, which was the next lowest in this hemisphere. I think it was Belize had 50 cents an hour. When he tried to raise it from 35 cents to 50 cents, the forces came down on him. I think it was the International Monetary, it could have been the World Bank that said, no, you won't. If you do that, you won't get another cent of aid. That's the power that was still being held over a supposedly independent country. There are people who depend on that 35 cent an hour wage. The other thing that I think, and I've not talked about this much, I need to be held account here probably a little bit. I think another thing influencing Haiti's development or lack of development is an attitude of power deprivation. When your colonial power, even after you've overthrown them, has that much power over you, when the rest of the world is dictating things for you. I should mention that Haiti has never had control of its loan payments. Those were done the Citibank in New York, or the ancestor to Citibank originally, had control of Haiti's budget, of their money. So they would make the payments out to themselves. And they took over the Haiti's loan. When you have a bank controlling that, you're not going to be, in fact, I didn't fact check this, but I've heard reports that Citibank actually spent a number of times refinanced Haiti's loan in order to keep it going. You know, the terms were worse than they were before the refinancing. So they changed it in their favor rather than in Haiti's favor. When you live under that sense of other people being in control, when the people can vote for someone they think is going to be on their side, like Papa Doc Duvalier, nicknamed Papa Doc, Francois was his name, because he was an actual doctor. And he was of African origin. He wasn't one of the elite yet. So there was every sign that he was going to be helping, being a voice for the people. And yet very quickly, it turned out otherwise. When you see this happening over and over again, it kind of, well, there was never, there was never a we the people moment that, we could celebrate, after our independence. We the people have spoken. And we had models for democracy like the Iroquois and others who showed us how a democracy could work. And that has never been present in Haiti. And so to me, there's that mindset of that power comes from the top down. And so what I need to do rather than vote is to join a leader who looks like they're going to have influence over others. And so you have these gangs develop under gang lords, because basically that's what Haiti is known, in one sense or another, as a gang lord, an overlord. So my guess is that that's part of the reason we see the internal struggles going on now, is because that's the model that their history has given them. I would like to turn our focus now to the other half of that island, the Dominican Republic. Its situation was a bit different. It did not have the same quantity of African slaves. Spain was a little bit different in their handling of their colony. And so there were a lot more what they called I've heard referred to as Spanish Creoles. They've had a lot of mixed blood with the Indian population, and probably even some slaves too, but who thought of themselves ethnically as pretty Spanish. And so, whereas in Haiti, that was a problem at the beginning, because the mulattoes, what they called mulattoes, did not identify with the slaves, the former slaves, and vice versa. So one time in Haiti's history, the gang leader who won, the overlord, Boyer was his name, who was a mulatto, united Haiti again. Well, let's see. Before him, the nation had fallen into two separate ones, the mulattoes and the former slaves. And Boyer was the one who reunified Haiti, but he kept the blacks out of power. So there was that dynamic was not necessarily true in the Dominican Republic. The Dominican Republic faced, and it was about 50 years later that they gained their independence, but they have the experience of, at times France was in control of the whole country, first as a colony, but then later, after the Spanish Creoles defeated the colonial forces in Dominican Republic, Boyer over in Haiti took advantage of that and said, well, we were one island before, let's be one island again, and took them over. Well, that did not sit well with the the Spanish Creoles at all, and they eventually remedied that by rebelling. And so they had different stages in their independence. And there we see a continuing kind of legacy of ideological differences. There have been basically two political parties who keep going back and forth and at odds. And one of those parties was very amenable to dictators like Trujillo. Trujillo would have had the support. He was fortunate to have the support of the United States. During this time, the United States was more happy with, they didn't necessarily like dictators, probably. We probably have evidence of that, but they were more friendly to US companies than say, democracies. We were a little bit afraid of democracies. So, and even after Trujillo did that massacre of 20,000 Haitians who were living just across the border and there to work on farms and states and stuff. After that massacre of 20,000 Haitians, we stood up for him and we helped him cover that up and rephrase it so it did not look so bad. It wasn't until, let's see, what was the year? Yeah, 1961. It wasn't until 1961 when things had gotten so bad that we could not excuse our support of Trujillo, and the CIA or whoever the powers may be say, okay, our hands are off, and then some of Trujillo's own followers assassinated him, and we let that happen. In democracy was not easy after that. There was still that little war going on, and at one time the Marines walked into Haiti and said, well, we'll take over for a while, and you can read the details, and we eventually left them alone again, and they got on with their exchange of power between the one party and the other. I am not well versed in that. I did a lot of remedial work and did the big read class on Julia Alvarez's book, and so I had a chance to complete my Caribbean knowledge by a little research in the Dominican Republic. Cuba has even different story, always held by Spain, even though England had made some efforts to take it over. Those never were fully successful. The British forces were not able to, or decided it wasn't worth fighting with the Spaniards over Cuba. And Cuba had two actual wars of independence before 1898, the Spanish-American War. But both were unsuccessful. The last was held by that poet and literary marvel, Jose Marti, who had spent some time living in this country, though wasn't overly impressed. It was the imperialism that kind of turned him off, soured him to our country. But he was influential in the Second War for Independence, just before, that was a decade just before 1898. It was in the 1890s. And he was unfortunately killed in that effort. It did not go very far. And so Cuba did not necessarily have a successful war of independence, but in a sense, it was independent at the time of the Spanish-American War. The United States did not take it over as a colony like they did Puerto Rico, but they did maintain control. The Platt Amendment is what you want to read if you want to figure out the details of that. In 1901, the Platt Amendment was passed in Congress, and it set up arrangements for how long the U.S. would be there and what kind of control. They had control over the finances for a while. Same with Dominican Republic. We had stepped in and took over finances and then gradually handed them back. We felt that kind of liberty. Cuba in the in its early days, fell victim to dictators, Machado, and then Batista. And we supported them both until the very end, again. But the country was also very friendly to other interests in the U.S., like the mafia. There was a lot of mafia influence in Cuba. It was a capital. It was a capital for tourism and resorts. People went there to vacation. They liked the music and the sun and things like that. And so there was a sliver of the population that was serving them. But basically, Cuba was in a sad state of affairs economically, as far as most people go, when Fidel started in the well, I think it was in 1953. You can find it on your timeline when he first started rebelling, started to gather forces to counter Batista, and didn't have the resources and was arrested, got out of prison, went to Mexico, hooked up with Che Guevara, came back over in a small boat, very small invasion, a very small little boat. I forget the name of that boat, but Granma. In fact, it's still over there. You'll see a couple issues of the Cuban government's official magazine, kind of a propaganda piece. But Granma is its name after that small boat. This time, Fidel was, with the help of his brother Raul as well. They hid out in the Sierra Maestra Mountains in the southwestern corner of the island, and they gained a lot of support very quickly, and were victorious in 1959 in getting rid of Batista. Immediately, Fidel went to the United States for support. And they were a little bit curious, a little bit skeptical. Fidel had done, the government there had done things like had taken over companies. Like, now your company is no longer going to be working for somebody off island. Your company is going to be working for the people of Cuba. They even went as far as taking over homes, large homes of the elite, the very wealthy, and said, "We have people without homes. You have more than you need. You are going to open your home to other people." And so a lot of those folks left rather than pay that price. And of course, then when the United States turned Fidel down, the Khrushchev, or I think it was still Khrushchev in power then, said, "Okay, we'll help you out." And Fidel needed that help, that support, and that kind of it wasn't until after that 1961 when they were getting all this help from the Soviet Union that Fidel declared Cuba a communist state. It probably would have had to be characterized as socialist leaning before then, but it had not declared itself as a communist state until that time. One of my theories, I'm an idealist, and so I kind of wonder, this may be completely off base and have no grounds, but I kind of wonder what would have happened if we had said yes to Fidel. We're going to help you. If you agree to develop a democracy, we'll give you the support. What would have happened? I kind of like to think that nice things would have happened. There is Che Guevara. He left to help the Bolivians fight fatally. But I have heard that one of the reasons he left was not just his generosity toward others in Latin America, but because he and Fidel had a real big out over this. Che Guevara did not like the idea of buddying up with the Soviet Union, and they really came to disagreement over that. You can read a little bit about our change of relationships, the embargo. And by the way, all my 3 trips, I saw evidence that nobody likes the embargo. Not even nobody in Cuba likes the embargo. Not even a lot of the ex-Cuban, the Cuban expatriates who came to this country, because they like to go back and help their relatives, you know, and that embargo sometimes interferes with that. So that's one clear thing that I can say about Cuba. But mostly I say it's a complex story. So whatever you hear about Cuba, I like the book that says it's neither paradise nor hell. I think that's the most realistic. Some people have tried to turn it into a paradise and idealize Fidel and what he did. And certainly there was the accomplishments of the revolution are astounding educationally and medically. Cuba has done some amazing things for its people. And I guess exported some of that help, particularly in medical care, to others. But it still does not have the personal freedoms of expression. I have gotten to know a number of people who have spent time in Cuban jails, some of whom still support the revolution ideologically. You know, they're not opposed. Some of them even complained. I think this is just my guess from one conversation we had. I didn't get too involved in conversations about politics in my trips to Cuba, but I think that his only complaint that he had with his government that he shared in conversation was that this reintroducing of capitalism, which they turned to after the Soviets left, they started introducing private property, and the US currency became dominant. So if you had access to US dollars, you sort of belonged to a separate class. We went out for ice cream in Santa Clara once. And because we had access to dollars, we could go right and get an ice cream. There was this long line for everybody else. You didn't have access to US dollars. And that was stirred the conversation. He says, we're developing a class system, and that's not supposed to happen in our revolution. Anyway, we're running out of time, and there might be some questions that come up about that. The other thing is that I've spent a lot of time reading official government propaganda, and the thing that I have determined, I can't find factual errors in a lot of it, in most of it. You know, the supposed terrorists who are in our jail right now, the Cuban Five, they were known as, were actually here, not conducting terrorism, but were spying on terrorists. There are a lot of ex-Cuban terrorists who would, actually they shot down one plane once, killed the whole young Cuban fencing team, along with some doctoral students coming from Guyana, and some others. And they were dropping leaflets at best. They were flying over Cuba and dropping leaflets, but they were also conducting bombings in hotels in Cuba to discourage the trade. And so Cuba had these agents here observing when their planes would take off. That's all they were doing, is observing. But because they violated the visa requirements, they ended up in jail. I read a lot of their statements and determined they didn't write these statements. The idea was that this book that I read, these are what these prisoners scrawled out with their little pencils in prison. No way. You know, it was definitely generated from the government, and yet I couldn't find any factual errors with it. Cuba doesn't have commercial billboards; they have propaganda billboards. I call them their propaganda kind of cheerleading. That's the cheerleading for the revolution. Viva la libertad and things like that. Viva la revolución. There's this one billboard that I've reproduced here. Today, 200 million children in the world are sleeping on the streets. And then the bottom it says, not one of them is Cuban. So it's a true fact. But it's propaganda in the sense that it's trying to maintain this popular support for the government. We have to move on here. Jamaica is the last country to achieve independence, not till 1962. That wasn't too long ago. That was just 7 years before my first trip to Haiti. And, I didn't realize, I also went to Jamaica at the time. I didn't realize that all the time it was such a new country, but it was 1962. And yet they've had the easiest time in many regards. Now a Jamaican might call more things to your attention than I can. There were some slave rebellions and things like that, but Britain was kind of hands off with its colonies and left it to the British plantation owners. So the plantation owners were in charge, you know, took the positions of government. They were so it was a labor thing, labor disputes going on, and slave issues, and then worker issues that were going on, determining things. And the transition was kind of peaceful. You know, Britain said, "Okay, you're ready now. There's your country." So that's abbreviated, probably unfair short version, but I think there's no argument that it was a different story than Haiti. The ingredients that we talked about earlier were different. And Puerto Rico did have some rebellions, and the El Grito de Lares, you can find on your calendar, was a big one against Spain. But then it became a colony against its wishes, you know, out of its control, became a colony of the United States. And I forget the name of the act of Congress that established the relations with Puerto Rico. But there was a lot of resistance in the first part of the 20th century, a lot of resistance and some uprisings. And the independence movement then was called the Nationalist Party in English. And they did things both in this country and on the island. But what happened, how the U.S. responded, is that the FBI got involved intensively. There was a massive investigation, surveillance, and anybody showing sympathies for independence was immediately targeted. Their families were targeted. They compiled documents. They sabotaged these people in their efforts. They squashed a lot of the independent fervor. And all these documents are now open to the public. You can read them, just tons and tons of papers depicting, documenting the work of the FBI to squash the independence movement. The other thing they did in the middle of the century was to grant some more concessions. In other words, at least a name, took Puerto Rico out of the colony column and made it allowed that free associated state, where there was a little bit more local authority. That's when Luis Munoz Marin was elected as the first Puerto Rican locally elected governor. At the same time, there was that Marin worked out with the U.S. this arrangement, in English somebody called Operation Bootstrap, where U.S. corporations were given tax-free status on the island, so they could come and were not charged taxes for their companies, their factories. And so a lot of companies moved down. That created a whole lot of jobs and led to a middle class. Pharmaceuticals were very big on the island, and still when I was there. It didn't create a lot of wealth for the island, but it created a lot of jobs. So Puerto Rico had the advantage that Haiti did not have, and that is a fairly large middle class that's under threat right now because of changes that are going on. I should back up. Ever since 52, they've been polling the people. The Haitian government has been polling its population on which status it likes, and immediately, of course, it was what we call an English Commonwealth. It's a free associated state. They preferred that to statehood and independence. To be fair to the independent-minded folks, they realized that they were not going to win the election. They did not want the statehood party to win the election. And so they usually voted for the Commonwealth. There's a lot more, and this is the current Independence Party flag, Puerto Rico. So it won't get me in trouble, I don't think. And this is Luis Muñoz Marin's party, the Populares, they called, Popular Democratic Party. Their slogan is Pan, Tierra, Libertad, bread, land, and liberty. And that's been always their goal. That stayed pretty much true in the early plebiscites. In 2012, they had a very complicated one in which there are two questions asked. So that's why those numbers don't add up. So in one of the questions, only statehood and independence, I believe is how it worked, were given as options. So that the 2012 vote, still percentage high turnout, but it was not seen as a clear mandate for any change in the preference. 2017 was, but it was, there was a boycott. The way it was stated was it led it to a boycott. And so only 22% voted, and I didn't even list the results there because they're not. 2020 is the first time that a plebiscite showed a preference for statehood. But they just asked the question, do you want to become a state or no? And a lot of people still, look at that turnout was very low. A lot of people still were not in favor. It was not seen by Congress as a clear statement. So it was enough for the statehood party, the Progresistas, the statehood party, the more conservative party has the word progressive in it, which is a little bit confusing. But they took that vote as they put into motion in Congress, asking for statehood. And Congress said, we're not quite sure you're there yet. We want you to do another, and this was the last effort of the last Democratic Congress we had, and AOC was in charge of the committee that was working through this. And I actually think they did a good job of saying, no, we don't like your plebiscite. So let's have a committee. Let's come up with one that's a little bit more sure and be an educational process as well. So they're working on that, but nothing's much is happening in Congress right now. So that's still in limbo. But the other thing that has helped bring down the number of people voting for the Commonwealth status is because it has become clear lately that that may be in name only. Puerto Rico is feeling more of a colony again, and they don't think that this free associated status is really doing everything it promised. You know the reaction that gets to the Maria hurricane, that kind of fiasco. But there have been other things. Puerto Rico had to declare bankruptcy. Congress set up a junta, what's called a junta in Puerto Rico, that has created some austerity measures and other things that have just not gone over well. And they've done things like made it enticing for people, wealthy people in this country, to go down and move to Puerto Rico. They don't have to pay any taxes there, but they get to enjoy the climate and everything else. And they have these walled communities and stuff. What it's doing is creating more poverty in Haiti and draining more wealth. These people are they have to be served. And so Puerto Ricans are being turned into servants for these people. Again, it's just not sitting well. So that's the kind of limbo that Puerto Rico exists in right now. We can, that would probably take a whole other class though to explore that. So let's take a break, and during the break, I'll have some salsa going on. expatriate salsa, mostly Puerto Rican artists going on. But since I don't have as much artwork from Puerto Rico, that I didn't hang on to as much of that, I have brought one of the favorite beverages of Puerto Rico. I got to learn this, enjoy this in school when I saw grade school kids, even with one of these on their desk during lunchtime, eating with their lunch. This is Malta, a non-alcoholic malt beverage. I can explain it later, but it's basic. It's got a nice kind of sweet molasses taste to it. It's lightly carbonated. I only have 24 ounces, so there's some small cups back there. And this gentleman has a bottle opener, and he will get those over there, and you can try that out if you wish, because it's a very popular drink. And throughout the Caribbean, I have a can from one of the Cuban varieties of Malta, just in case you've never tried it. You don't have to like it. It goes well with a lot of Caribbean food. I wish we could have a food party, but that's a little bit hard to pull off here. We'll turn to music instead. But first, are there questions that you would like to address with the help of a microphone or an email? I probably won't get to you as easily by email, but I will cover any questions that come in and via email. Yeah, yes, up here in front.
I missed the very first part of your first
Mm-hmm.
lecture. How your father brought you to the Caribbean,
Haiti, Haiti and
Haiti?
Jamaica.
and what was your father's connection to take you?
That's a long story, but it's a West Michigan story. My dad somehow got interested in missions going on in the Caribbean, and he knew that that La Gonave, the Wesleyans there, had the only mission going on, and it was a very desperate place. Tony Wolf, some of you may even heard the name before, was a prominent farmer in Ottawa County, and friend of Gerald Ford. He retired and he moved down to Haiti. His wife eventually followed. Amazing story. They just picked up, went to the poor spot in Haiti, and he decided to do what he could do, to develop the agriculture there where there is no soil. After not too long after, maybe about a year or so after he was down there, he had a heart attack. Well, there's 12 miles of open ocean. The mission only had there were Haitian sailboats, small sailboats that you could take, but the mission only had a 14-foot aluminum outboard motor to cover those 12 miles. You're not going to go with a heart attack over those miles. So Dad went down to see what he could do. Eventually got the Marines through the embassy to bring a helicopter over to pick him up. Dad felt kind of responsible for getting him there, so he wanted to get him, and he did recover and kept on working on La Gonave. It was an amazing story, but that's about all I want time I want to take to talk about it now. Anything else? Yes. If some of these raise questions that you want to address more fully in a class, we can always even find more expert folks to deal with some of these issues maybe in a future HASP class. So remember that option. I'm going to put on some salsa music that will last for 7.5 minutes. But when that ends, then we'll begin again, and you can take advantage of looking over this stuff and tasting the malt, et cetera, whatever.
Que no se oye esa clave, ¿qué pasa?
sucediendo, que hace tiempo que no vengo y no me quieren contar. Ahora vengo yo, ahora vengo yo, ahora vengo yo, ahora vengo yo. Cuando yo estaba en New York, la gente me criticaba. Cuando yo estaba en New York, la gente me criticaba. Y ahora como no estoy, me meten en la ensalada. Pero ve, ahora vengo tumbando, vengo relajando. Ay, que ahora vengo yo, vengo para gozando. Dice Barreto que viene tumbando, que ahora vengo yo. Ya usted lo ve, ya usted lo ve, ya usted lo ve, ya usted lo ve. Ahora, que ahora vengo yo, y vengo sonando, y vengo, ahora vengo yo.
Reggie Ray. Reggie Ray.
El piano de la dulzura, Ricardo Rey.
Rumbero bueno, vengo al comando de las estrellas panias que están en alto. Ya usted lo ve, ya usted lo ve. Vengo sonando, con cuero chivo le estoy tumbando. Rucutucuplá, 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 rucutucuplá. Vengo acabando, la brisa suave le estoy cantando. De Puerto Rico que sienten algo. Y ahora vengo, vengo sonando, vengo sonando, vengo sonando. Mira que le tumba la salsa de Richie Ray. Quítate de la vía, de
Okay, our musicians are over, so let us take our seats. I'm still trying to figure it out.
Oh, with the person.
Yeah.
About Billy, but I didn't know if it was Jonah or something.
It reminded me of Jonah, but I don't think that that's the artist's intention.
Que no se oye.
Okay, the cultural gift, the biggest cultural gift of the Caribbean, that is at least the easiest to talk about, maybe, and study, is music. So that's where we're focused, although some of the artwork I did want to call your attention to. The middle table is from Haiti, and you can see that it is largely folk art. The wood carvings are very abundant. You can find a lot of people making those. And the last couple decades, this has become a very popular form of finding things that they can sell to outside the country, whether to tourists or through organizations like 10,000 Villages and a bridge down here on 8th Street. Haitians discovered they had a lot of old oil barrels, you know, somehow there's a great big source of oil barrels or other barrels. They take the lids off and they pound them into different designs with a hammer and chisel. They cut them. There's the array of things you can get made to cut metal like this is amazing. I lifted that up because it shows a little bit about Haitian ingenuity. They can do amazing things with little. Anyway, as we get into music, I got both my claves and my cowbell from one trip to Haiti, to Cuba. And that is the most influential island in the Caribbean as far as music goes. Reggae comes a close second, maybe, from Jamaica. But salsa is generally a blanket term to cover a lot of different forms of music. I introduced you to some of those terms on the quiz last week. But it is the combination of those ingredients we saw, the combination of the colonial influence. Some of the musical styles, danzón comes from Spain, but then the African beats, as well as the more peasant sources of the in Puerto Rico called the Jibaro, la música jíbara, from the folks up in the mountains. And that African beat is very significant, very important. And some of the forms of music isolate just that rhythm. And so in any form of Latin, Caribbean music, you listen for the clave. There was a popular rock song in the 50s or 60s that picked up the clave beat. Bum, 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 bum. I can't bring it to mind right now, but you know what it is?
No.
Oh, okay, all right. Oh, okay.
Years ago,
Years ago, I found at a yard sale, like a whole set of the steel drum music things, and I never even thought about what country down in the Caribbean.
Yeah,
that
the steel
probably came-
pans.
Yeah, the steel
The
pan drum.
steel pans, the steel drums come from Trinidad, the British. Trinidad, and I think some of it worked its way up into the Bahamas, possibly.
Okay.
But
Random
those are
question, but I
yeah.
figured since we're talking
Right.
music in the Caribbean,
Very
you might know.
influential, right? Also very good, yeah. Mhm. Bring the microphone up. Listen for that clave beat, because it's not just there to decorate the music, it's there to set the style. That clave, or sometimes the cowbell. No, that's a little bit loud. Sometimes that clave, the cowbell is doing it. It's establishing the root that goes, the root of the music, which goes all the way back to Africa, or at least originally, and may have been modified here. But that distinguishes the type of music. It is in control. It's not just a decoration. Yes, you had a question.
I noticed with the sticks, there's a nice ring to it
Mhm.
when you play it, as it's, there is, I noted, with the bell also.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
after.
Anyway, so this is the Malecón, and you often find musicians, even at night, is a place to go in Havana. Los Muñequitos de Matanzas, Matanzas is a city east of Havana on the north coast. And they are recognized as I'm going to turn this over to Ruben Blades from Panama, who got heavily involved in salsa music. And he describes them a little bit more. But they are the ones that, when I was interested in music, someone turned me to the Los Muñequitos, and they're very good at keeping alive the very original roots of the music that you'll see gets branched out later.
The mambo craze in the 1950s, the New York salsa sound in the 1970s. But those styles share common roots.
You hear?
El son y la rumba. The name rumba might sound familiar. There was a rumba craze that swept the United States in the 1930s and brought Cuban music to Broadway and every ballroom across the country. It was a taste of authentic Cuban music, but it was not rumba. The authentic rumba is a music of drums and voices. It grew in the tenements of the poor neighborhoods of Havana and Matanzas. The most important rumba group in Cuba is Los Muñequitos de Matanzas. It was founded in 1952 by a group of dock workers in the port city of Matanzas, east of Havana. And it was organized just to play local much later in 1965. At first, it was called Guaguancó Matancero. The current name in their first recording back in 1953. It was a rumba guaguancó called Los Muñequitos, and it was dedicated to the newspaper comics, or Muñequitos, and it was a hit. And from then on, Guaguancó Matancero was known in Cuba as Los Muñequitos de Matanzas.
Aquí están los muñequitos tocando. Mamaita, qué lindo compás. Aquí están los muñequitos tocando.
You get the idea. One of those original forms we talked about briefly last week was the Guajira. So I thought I should at least
I have a
play
question.
Yes. Mhm.
Was that Ruben Blades that was the narrator?
Yeah, the actor is a good salsa musician. too.
Oh, really? He's a
Yeah.
wonderful actor.
Yeah, he's
And
put out a
director,
number
too.
of albums. Mhm. Yeah, a very good actor. He's from Panama. Whoops. Did I do that right? kind of hypnotic, right? I hate to turn him off, but we'll move on here. And to show how some of the same root music from Africa developed differently in Puerto Rico. Plena is one form, and this group is called Los Pleneros, those who play plena, Los Pleneros de la 21, and it comes from either a bar or a restaurant on 21st Street. That's the 21. And I believe Santurce, the part of San Juan called Santurce.
Yo soy testigo policía, oye, dale macana, policía que se comió la colorada. Yo soy testigo policía, dale macana, policía se comió la colorada. Aunque él salió pa' Ponce y otro pueblo en Guayama, yo soy testigo policía, oye, dale macana. Yo soy testigo policía, dale macana, policía se comió la colorada. Porque él no tiene una licencia ni para conducir, dale macana, policía y acuéstalo todo dormir. Yo soy testigo policía, dale macana, policía se comió la colorada. Que mi mamá y mi papá que se dieron cuenta, aquí bajando por la calle la piquiña me dio una cerveza. Yo soy testigo policía, dale macana, policía se comió la colorada. Yo soy testigo policía, dale macana, policía se comió la colorada. Ay, que él se comió la colorada, él se comió la colorada. Yo soy testigo policía, se comió la colorada. Yo soy testigo policía, dale macana, policía se comió la colorada. Aunque él salió pa' Ponce y otro pueblo en Guayama, yo soy testigo policía, oye, dale macana. Yo soy testigo policía, dale macana, policía se comió la colorada. Ay, que él se comió la colorada.
Well, let's leave them too. Okay. You can see what's going on here with those different cultural influences. The spirit of the Caribbean is to take what you have, even though it's not much. We have gourds, we'll turn them into a musical instrument. We can find things to hit, the cows don't always need their bell. So with little resources, you tell your story in music. You take what you've been given, even though it's been rotten, and you make something out of it. Bomba is a style of music that's a little bit closer to this African influence. Basically was rhythm and adding the voice and dance to that rhythm. All of these instrumentations, like you hear the trumpets and stuff in the earlier recording, all of those get added in as they can, and the different stringed instruments, but you do what you can with what you have. One way the music gets used is in the holidays. I wasn't going to tell this, but I think I have time. The holidays are wonderful in Puerto Rico because the Puerto Ricans couldn't discover whether to follow the European tradition of celebrating with gifts on January 6th, Epiphany, or doing like the Americans did with the 25th, have the gifts. So they decided to do both. And so people go all out with gifts on the 25th, and they go out with gifts on the 6th. But those 12 days of Christmas in between the 25th and 26th doesn't stop them. The older European tradition was to go on beyond Epiphany with Christmas celebrations. And now that the Americans are there, there's an influence to even start before the 25th. And so you've got all of these celebrations going on. The biggest one is called a parranda. And that's where you get a bunch of people and you go to someone's house and you sing for them outside, banging whatever you have, claves if you have them, pots and pans if you don't have a cowbell. The guitars, anyone with a guitar will bring a guitar, and you sing these songs. And then boy, I was going to do that, a demonstration of that. El lechón se coge, se mata y se pela. You know, they're very, very alegre vengo de las montañas de mi cabaña, que alegre está. Y a mis amigos les traigo flores de las mejores de mi rosal. That's a Christmas song. Happy I come from the mountains. Alegre vengo de, from my cabin in the mountains, bringing roses, but the best roses of my garden for my friends, and to sing. Anyway, where was I going? Okay, I need to get back to bomba. Okay, the original, the importance of just the rhythm, and then adding the voice and the dance, letting that affect your feet as well. This is from a series on if cities could dance, and then they take different cities around the world and look at those cities in terms of dance. And this is the one from San Juan.
Hi, my name is Maria. I'm Mar. We are here in San Juan, Puerto Rico with If Cities Could Dance, and this is Bomba.
En la bomba tú haces el ritmo y entonces todo lo demás te sigue a ti. Estamos bailando en tres áreas que son el corazón de la bomba en el norte: San Juan, Santurce y Loíza. Es una manera de bailar bien libre. Tú haces lo que en el momento tú sientas, lo que en el momento tú te nazcan hacer. Me ha llevado a quererme, a respetarme, a valorarme. La bomba viene de África, ¿no? De nuestros ancestros los africanos.
Me siento honrada porque yo siento que yo estoy representando a mis antepasados, ¿entiendes? A mis ancestros. O sea, esa era la única forma de ellos expresarse.
Un instrumento, un espacio para rebeliones, ¿verdad? Sirvió. Antisistémica, antirracista, anti todas esas opresiones que significaba ese sistema esclavista que había en esa época. Hoy en día, pues, la música sigue siendo un espacio de libertad y sigue siendo un espacio político de transformación. A bailar.
Me acuerdo que cuando mi mamá me puso esa ropa, yo me sentí que yo era el video. Yo, ay Dios mío, me encontraba tan bonita. Wow, este es algo con lo que yo me puedo identificar, esto soy yo, esto es parte de mí. Santurce se convierte en el primer lugar de donde estaban ubicados los esclavos libertos. Loíza se vuelve en el pueblo donde mayor concentración de negros hay.
Esta cueva es una muy antigua y es uno de estos lugares a donde las personas escapadas de la esclavitud, como los cimarrones.
Bailárselo pues me gusta también, pero me da mucha más alegría cuando estoy con mi hermana. Y qué alegría, ¿verdad? También estar juntas.
La influencia taína la vemos en los términos como la maraca, el cuá. La maraca, el cuá mantienen el ritmo constante, igual que los tambores. Y el primo, ese es el que improvisa. Una comunicación entre bailador y tocador.
La familia Cepeda fue una de las muchas familias que mantuvieron el baile y el legado vivo.
El primer maestro que nosotros tuvimos.
If you couldn't even,
Hi, my name is Maria.
particularly if you couldn't read the yellow transcript very well, you can find that online. Anyway, I wanted to put in some Chucho Valdez in Iraquere, a group that he quite often plays with. Chucho Valdez is a well-renowned pianist from Cuba. And Iraquere is a group that has taken salsa and moved it into jazz. So I wanted to show that as one of the extents to which this, from the roots, has flourished. And quite often they will, I don't think necessarily in this number, but quite often they will begin one of their numbers with a simple single voice singing the song of the root song that goes way back. And why didn't include him? Because Chucho Valdez and Iraquere came to Hope College back in 2015, something like that. I thought it was amazing, that opportunity to see him live in my own town now for only $16. Thank you, Hope College. But this is from a festival in Lugano, that's Switzerland, right? Okay.
Rafael de alto saxofón. El tango de Lorena es el título. Es el tango de Lorena.
That's the song I want to play for you. Well, you can get more of Chucho easily. So let's move on before. Let's move on to Jamaica. And I decided to assume that you know Bob Marley, all right? You would be able to sing along with I Shot the Sheriff, or One Woman, One Love, what is it? And those kind of things. And so you're kind of familiar with that already. So I thought I'd show you the roots of reggae and the music they called ska, and then another form called rocksteady. And you will be able to hear, I think, yourselves the influence. Forgive me if you're not a reggae familiar with the reggae at all, then this means probably nothing, but hopefully you will get something of it. Oh, we had the same thing happened when these got transferred over. My starting points did not carry over.
The good you do is after you.
Whoops, I didn't mean to stop it, but since we are stopped. There we go.
I woke up this morning, I didn't say good morning. Well, I woke up this morning, but I didn't say good morning. But I know that I never said good morning. I woke up this morning, and then I saw my darling.
I think you can hear that that's an ancestor to reggae. And this is rocksteady, the other form. Besides ska and rocksteady, of course, Bob Marley and Peter Tosh, Bunny Wailer, they were listening to a lot of American music at the same time. So it's just as much of an influence on reggae. That's also an influence on reggae, is what they were hearing from American radios.
DJ Inferno sailing, sailing on to better days. Baby, I'm not joking, and it's not what I'm smoking. I really think you're nice. Don't think I'm kidding you, and don't think I'm bidding. If silver words are your price, but oh, if you could see, oh yeah, the change you've made in me. That the angels in the skies were envious and surprised that anyone is.
That's just a bit of rock steady.
DJ Infer.
Let's go to Haiti while we still have time. This is an example of a music form called compa, sometimes spelled with a C. So if you're looking for it, and this is a song. I think the title of the song is not Karimi, but Haiti, the Haitian word for Haiti, Haiti, bang bang.
FBI, DEA. Mes amis, mes amis, mes amis. Oh, FBI, DEA. Mes amis, mes amis, mes amis. Ça fait des hommes pas ouais. Pays moi changer couleur. Ça fait des hommes qui t'aiment. Figili marqué misère. Tout plutôt fermer des jeunes. Faire semblant ça va changer. Nous plutôt fermer des jeunes. Des petites pas nous pas tourner mes amis. Haïti moi. Oh. Sans moi c'est lui. Dis-moi qui s'en va le faire. Faut changer mentalité moun yo. Pays en danger. Pas de personne qui décide les bons pieds. Oh yo yo, nous plutôt fermer des jeux. Faire semblant ça va changer. Nous plutôt fermer des jeux. Des petites pas nous pas tourner mes amis. Haïti ouais. Oh. Sans moi c'est lui. Oh, mes amis, mes amis, mes amis. Oh, oh. Caribé.
There, now you've heard more compa. Even though I'm cutting it short, you've heard more compa than most people have. Somebody asked you what. FBI. But I got to get to the Dominican Republic yet, and merengue. And I'm not going to be able to resist myself this time. If anyone else wants to start dancing, you can. But merengue is very popular in Puerto Rico too. And it's one of the few salsa steps that I can basically even remember. I might break out into a little of that. But it's also considered a form of salsa, you know, similar origins as what we've been hearing from Cuba and Puerto Rico. But you'll just notice a distinction.
Luna llena, luna llena, luna llena, luna llena.
Hello?
Bajo una noche estrellada de luna llena quiero decirte mi amada mil cosas bellas. promesa y el pacto de amor que hoy da comienzo. Quiero decirte que te amo desde aquel día que tu mirada chocó con la mía. Nunca te pude borrar de mi recuerdo. Desde ese instante yo sé cuánto te quiero. Hasta no lo coges, cógelo.
Now, I have to admit that my friends in Puerto Rico laugh at me when I try that. They say, Phil, you have caderas gringas, gringo hips. You got to loosen your hips a little bit more, Phil. I go, what am I? Anyway, I can never quite get it right. You can look up merengue dance. You want to see how it's really done. But if you go to ballroom and you're getting something else, they're the ones who just take the roots of the dance and just expand it to contortion. I don't know. But I have to end with Pablo Milanés. I've only managed to get 6 of his albums. Most of those I had to get in either Cuba or in Canada. But that he has he takes the roots of Cuban music in a different direction. So you may not be able to detect it as much. He takes it into folk ballads. And he and a couple other Cuban artists started what is called Nueva Trova, a form of ballad singing. And it has, if you're familiar with Brazilian music, Milton Nascimento, it's a very similar style as his, and became very popular both on the island and away from the island. And it's a voice that kind of melts you. I almost started a radio program before I moved back here to Michigan from the Northwest, because the new public station was asking for anybody who wanted to do. And I said, I've got probably the biggest collection of Cuban music in the state of Washington. I'm going to have a Cuban music program. And I decided I'd end every program with Pablo Milanés. It's just is a wonderful. This is basically a love song. His phrasing is just.
Esta no puede ser no más que una canción. Quisiera fuera una declaración de amor romántica, sin reparar en formas tales que pongan freno a lo que siento ahora raudales. Te amo, eternamente te amo. Si me faltaras, no voy a morirme. Si he de morir, quiero que sea contigo. Mi soledad se siente acompañada. Por eso a veces sé que necesito tu mano, eternamente tu mano.
wasn't going to interrupt that, but I think that I will move to another one, so you can see. And so you can see how his audiences will, even though he's had so many songs, his audiences seem to know them all by heart. So you'll hear them singing along. El breve espacio en que no estás, that brief space where you aren't there. It's hard to say same in English, but where you aren't. Again, another love song, although he just sings patriotic country songs about Cuba too. Another song about when the absence of your loved one it strikes you, you know.
Todavía quedan restos de humedad. Sus olores llenan ya mi soledad. En la cama su silueta se dibuja cual promesa de llenar el breve espacio en que no está. Todavía yo no sé si volverá. Nadie sabe al día siguiente lo que hará. Rompe todos mis esquemas, no confiesa ni una pena, no me pide nada a cambio de lo que da. Suele ser violenta y tierna, no habla de uniones eternas, mas se entrega cual si hubiera solo un día para amar. No comparte una reunión, más le gusta la canción que comprometa su pensar. Todavía no pregunté, ¿te quedarás? Temo mucho la respuesta de un jamás. La prefiero compartida antes que vaciar mi vida. No es perfecta, mas se acerca a lo que yo simplemente soñé.
Well, we've reached the end of our time. Thank you so much for sharing it with me. And there's not a class at 1. So I'm not going to be in a hurry to take these things down. If you didn't get a chance to look at something that you want to, feel free to linger as long as you want. Well, I think Ian's got to close up sometime. No, it's right behind you though.
Phil, could you send us the list of these artists, these
Sure.
musicians, so that we would, after so many, I don't know if I could remember to look them up. So thank you.
Sure, I will do that. And, so again, thanks, and keep dancing. Now you don't have to embarrass yourself like I did. You can go home, find it online, and dance to your heart's intent.
Thank you so much, Phil.
What's that? Oh, okay. Oh. Okay, thank you. I'm glad that, that's something that's perceived, the passion. Yeah. Yours is too, is observable.
Thank you so much, Phil.
Mm.
And thank you all for coming.